other times you're protecting innocent people, like the police. What would we do without the police? The bad people run amok. We can't have it like that. Won't work. So we got these courageous beings in there who intervene with the negative beings. They're like the hell realm. They're protecting us from the hell beings. Because there's a lot of people that don't care about people. They have to be locked up because they're dangerous. So there has to be somebody there sometimes to protect others on that level. Tibet, even his Lord says, mighty help if we'd had some allies. Now he's not saying we make war on the Chinese, but maybe politically they could have put pressure on the Chinese to get them to back off. I mean, the CIA actually dumped loads of weapons into Tibet and brought Tibetans into Colorado to train them to be guerrillas. But nobody talks about that. So there were a little attempts made, but it was lost. So we have to have we need these guys. If somebody invades our country, we don't want people coming in and hurting people, okay? But we have to be careful. Because sometimes, where does the enemy come from? That's what this text is about. How is the enemy created? Well, is it from our side, or is it from their side? Well, I said about anger. Our enemies teach us patience. That doesn't mean we let them walk over the top of us. But we step back. Wait a minute. We try to keep the anger mind out. Then maybe we can talk to them. If necessary, maybe we'll get somebody to stand between us and them. You know, that's what sometimes we need an army. As Holy says, we need one army for the whole planet because there's always going to be bad guys. But we don't need every country to have their own army because this makes war. He says one army for the whole planet. When the mischievous people come up, then we send the army. So there has to be something like that to protect us from the negative-minded beings. There are negative beings that murder, you know, they take people's things, they harm people. We have to have, they're so negative that we can't even talk to them. Just like the Taliban. They won't listen. What do? If you don't do what they want, they kill you. That's not right. I mean, that's not that isn't a wholesome view of the world. So something has to be to put these guys off. We need somebody in there to put a stop to this, okay? See the Buddha right there with his hand? This is giving protection. He's got his hand like this. That's what that's about.
A small Buddha is sitting.
Yes. Now the Buddha may not get involved in that kind of stuff that way, but nevertheless, he's offering us protection for our own mind. So that's what this text is trying to do, is we're trying to protect ourselves from our own negative minds. Now, if we protect ourselves from our own negative mind, maybe there's a way to deal with the external event. Maybe there's a way where there's some dialogue begins to take place. But if they do stuff, we get angry, we hurt them back, then no solution. Then anger lasts generations. And we know this is true. In Afghanistan, these people have been warring for centuries, right? These groups, these tribes have been literally feuding for centuries. So this is like how would anybody get born in Afghanistan? What would they do? Maybe that's beside the point. We need some protection sometimes. I've got nothing wrong with the armed forces. There's a place for them on the planet if they're used in the right way.
Well, mine would be more like his martial arts where it's not...
For defense.
For defense. I'm not going to start something, but if somebody starts something with me, I'm going to be the one that finishes it.
Right. But at the same time, there's got to be a way to help the other person. You know, or they're going to come back even more angry in another life. I mean, there's got to be a way to try to think about the other person's potential. I have nothing wrong with defending ourselves. At the same time, how do we stop this from happening? Is there any way we can talk to the other person to say, look, if you do this, this happens. Is there any way we could share our space? Can we share the planet? Is there something you believe in? Is there some way we can share our beliefs without harming one another? Maybe there's a way for dialogue. You follow me?
It'd be great, yeah, but I just don't see everybody having that same attitude, and I think the people who don't are going to be the ones who reap the benefits then.
Well, that's where you come in. So you can deal with them. Okay? At the same time, be careful, because if you harm some living being, then in the future life, you may be harmed, okay? You'll be in a similar position where somebody will put it on you. So you have to be careful. You have to think about more than one life. Because if you're harming living beings, You're creating a condition to be born in a war next life. So there is, like His Holiness says, there's got to be somebody to control the crazy ones, the negative ones. Because otherwise they'll run amok and hurt everybody, okay? Because some people don't care at all. That's real obvious. I've been in jail. I know. I've been in there with the bad guys. I saw them, When I was like 20 years old, I was put in jail. I had 2 marijuana cigarettes before the hippies. They threw me in solitary 35 days. They said it was a grave crime, the judge. Now they give you a traffic ticket. If that, they let you go. But no, they put me in solitary 35 days just to sign a confession. So I saw the bad guys. There were some real bad guys in there, okay? So the world needs protection from them. Well, I agree with you. Somebody's got to be the police. Somebody's got to be the army. I have no problem with that.
But what happens to those people then that are the police and the army?
Well, as long as their motivations are to protect others and not so much to hurt others. That they're there solely to protect others from negative potential.
But in order to protect the other people, you may have to hurt the other people.
That's possible, but your motivation is out of compassion because their attitude is so negative that they can't see your side. Then somehow you have to defend this group of people or this thing in that way. We can't have Hitler taking over the planet, okay? Somebody's got to get in there and stop that. No problem. But the motivation was to save other beings.
Well, I agree with that. It's
the main motivation. This is the main thing. If there has to be violence, if the motivation is to benefit other living beings, then it still has positive potentials. There may be negative potentials too. It's a mix, okay? Like this lady wrote a paper on marijuana. She was telling me about it. So it's a mixed bag. It helps people with pain. It also spaces people out. They don't get anything done. There's no willpower. They don't accomplish anything. They just drift around, okay? On the other hand, sometimes it raises people's spirits, so they have new insight into things, But it has a very mixed bag. It has a lot of negative and positive potentials. So I'm with you. Somebody has to do this, what you're suggesting, okay? But it really is, in my own opinion, the key factor is one's motivation. If it's protect and help living beings, if there's crazies out there, then what can you do? You have to defend yourself and defend others. Do you agree with that?
Yeah,
I don't have a problem with that, okay? If somebody breaks in my house, you know what I do? I call the police. They're the guys that they're my protectors.
But what are you doing in between the time the
Well,
police show up?
I'm trying to deal with it, okay? Then I'll deal with it as much as I can. I lived in Big Sur. You call the police there, it's 2 hours it takes them to get there where we lived, okay? So the locals all had guns. So one day a guy broke into the store. The town was the size of less than this house. And he stole some candy bars. They called the police. They couldn't look for him. They couldn't find him. They left. They went back to Monterey. So the locals got their guns out. They didn't want this guy. They didn't know who he was. They didn't want to wander around the bushes near their home. Well, they cornered him down on the beach, and he jumped off the cliff. He was 15 years old. He killed himself because they scared him. Because they had their guns out to protect their family. So why didn't somebody just go up and talk to them? Hey, what's happening? See, they were just crazy. Even the locals got a little crazy. So that wasn't too good for them.
I think that when you're talking about it, you're thinking about such a big, huge level, and I think that part of it is that you have to start within, just yourself, and I think everything starts from what you're doing and what you do in your everyday life and how you approach things, and then it can almost like I teach my children is that just because he does it to you doesn't mean it's okay to do it back. You need to show him the right way to do it, because by him, whatever he does wrong to you, by you coming back and doing it to him or whatever, by you looking back and saying, you know what, that's not the right way to do it, you're kind of taking his power away from him. And I think that you're looking at such a large realm of, as in the armed forces and whatever, but if you can do that in your everyday life and look to if someone does something to you, understand protecting yourself is one thing, but then again, if you can kind of take that power away from that person.
Well, I agree. I mean, my sons were both taught to walk away whenever possible, but they were also both taught in martial arts that if anybody comes after them, that they're going to protect themselves.
Absolutely.
So
I've told
I
my
don't.
kids that too.
They're never going to be the aggressors. They're not going to be the ones who picking on somebody. They're not going to be the ones starting a fight. But if a fight started with them, they will be the ones finishing the fights.
Right. Well, yeah, you do have to teach them to protect themselves, of course. But I think physical violence is just
So
that's a hard thing.
we're sort of a little bit of agreement, okay? I mean, it just seems like I don't have a problem with what.
Well, I ideally think it would be great if it were if we could get everybody to be that same way, but it's just not reality.
Yeah. Sometimes the dialogue can take place, like His Holiness has tried to stop any guerrilla activities for the Tibetan people. He has said, no, you can't have to back up on this. It has to be through dialogue. This is what His Holiness wants. Because His Holiness isn't just seeing one life. He's seeing many lives. Ultimately, maybe he's thinking about the planet. Like the Tibetan people might represent the new humanity on the planet.
So, what's the chances of Tibet being returned back to Tibet to the monasteries and monks from China, though? Do you think that is going to be able to go? I mean, maybe with political intervention, but you don't think they would be able? It would be necessary to have a war to get Tibet back?
I don't think about it on those lines. I think more about if the Chinese hadn't gotten in there, I wouldn't have these teachings. So what has happened by the Chinese forcing their way in there is they've caused this sprinkling of this very huge potential of the Buddhist teachings that kept pure for 2,000 years in Tibet almost, to sprinkle out over the whole planet. So everybody's going to benefit by this. Tibetans are going to suffer from it, but the reason the Tibetans are suffering is because of the ignorance of the Chinese. The Chinese are communists. Religion's poison to communists. But eventually, China will be Buddhist. This is what's going to happen. Even His Holiness says, maybe I'll give the Kalachakra in Beijing someday. He gave it in Beijing in the 30s. So there are many Buddhist temples in China. So there's a lot of hidden Buddhists, closet Buddhists in China. They live in the fear of their army. We don't live like that here. Our army protects us. There, you don't do anything because they'll take you. And I was with a lady recently. Every student involved in Tiananmen Square was taken, killed, their families killed, and their professors killed at the university. They killed all those people, but nobody knows about that. She is Chinese. She came from China. She told me. I heard this from her, that this happened. Okay? They killed every university professor. They killed all the students. They killed all the families. They took all this out. Anybody connected with Tiananmen Square, they killed all those people. So this is what China's like. Chinese people aren't happy. They live in fear. There's a few in charge. It's like 80 million Chinese control 2 billion, 2.5 billion. So they live in fear every second. So we got to have an army for defense. And there's a point, each person has to make his own decision. Well, how far they want to take it, okay? For me, I try to get away from there. I try to back off. If I'm necessary, I take a stand and lay my life on the line, if necessary. If I'm going to protect people, I will take that stand. I will try to protect people, even give up my life if necessary.
Back to the Chinese, they were very hungry spiritually. I was there in '84.
Yes.
We smuggled Bibles in. I might have mentioned that last time I was here. And they were so hungry and so grateful. The guy that was our contact replaced the guy a year before that actually was executed for, this is in '84, so things are a little bit different.
Yes.
But for, doing the transaction of getting the Bibles, through his Open Doors ministry. It's terrible. Yeah, but they're very hungry for God or for something spiritual. Yeah.
Fantastic.
They do their Tai Chi out every morning on the grass, They go into their,
Right.
they do. You see them everywhere on the city streets doing their physical exercises,
Yeah. Fantastic.